Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pulse of the Pack podcast. We are here recording on a Wednesday night. Let me say first and foremost, happy 29th birthday to my lovely mother, Jennifer Westendorf, celebrated 29 again today. Embarrassed the hell out of her and had them sing happy birthday to her at the local establishment Smoky Bones, which she wanted for dinner tonight. So that was a lot of fun. And it's even more fun because we celebrated with some barbecue after the Packers went down to Kansas City, the barbecue capital of the world, and beat up the Kansas City Chiefs to get to 7-1. I am your host this evening. I am Jacob Westendorf, and joined with me, of course, Tolly, my friend. How are you, Mr. Perrone?
I'm doing well. Happy birthday to your mom, 100%. She has to put up with you and Adam and your dad, so she deserves every accolade, and the dogs. She deserves every accolade she gets today. So a very happy birthday to your mom.
Yeah, but she gets the baby, so it's like, that kind of makes up for a lot of different things too.
Well, and I didn't really throw you this nugget. I'm sure several people told you prior, and you've seen plenty of examples in the short time that little baby Blake has been with us. But once she was born, you no longer matter.
No, hell no. Nope, I didn't matter that much to begin with because my brother is my mom's favorite, so that's not that big of a deal. But I definitely moved down a notch as the baby was born. So that's where we're at on that. Packers win 31-24 Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. A tale of two halves, really. Actually, a tale of like 3 quarters versus 1 quarter. So the Packers were pretty much dominant for 3 quarters of the game. The 1 quarter, being the second quarter, was such a disaster that's really what made this game close. And I know you can't do this. It's professional sports. All the games, all the stats, all the yards, they all count. But if you take away the second quarter, the Packers win the game 31-7. That's just the reality. Unfortunately, that's not the reality that we live in. So it was 31-24, and we had to sweat it out a little bit. But Jason, the story of this game to me is Aaron Jones and just his full evolution that is absolutely complete as not just a running back for the Packers, but as a dual threat. I've often said that your money downs go to your money players. And at the end of the game, the Packers were looking to ice away the Kansas City Chiefs, and they designed a play and targeted Aaron Jones. And that was something I had the question of was when the chips are down and the Packers need to have a play, normally the answer to that question is going to be Davante Adams, who we'll get to in our next segment. But in this case, it was Aaron Jones. And Jones made the catch, to his credit, got the first down and ended the game basically. But before that, even if he doesn't make that play, he's got 2 touchdowns through the air and is able to make some big plays down the field for a Packers team that, really has just been dominant on offense. It's been a different guy each week. Well, this is the second time it's been Jones since Adams has been out, and he's been phenomenal. If it's not on the ground, he does it in the air. He's become a much better player in the passing game. Tell me, Jason, a little bit, just your thoughts in general on Aaron Jones and his ability to step up at a time when the Packers, they really needed him this last month, but especially Sunday night as they were kind of going back and forth a little bit. A lot of fun to watch his improvement. And just, what are your thoughts on Jones's ability to be that dynamic weapon for this offense?
Oh, it's incredible. He was incredible. He had an incredible game. Played really well. The running backs in the passing game this season is something that I have never experienced in my entire time watching the Packers, and that extends past 30 years. So, you think of the few seasons sprinkled in there where Amon Green had really good seasons, 28 or 1,800 rushing yards in 2003, but it wasn't anything like this. The dynamic nature of today's NFL and the passing game being what it is, and with Davante Adams being out, and by now, it shouldn't be a surprise that Aaron Jones is going to get the ball. He had 4 touchdowns against the Cowboys a few weeks ago and just goes off against the Chiefs. They couldn't match him up. They couldn't find an answer for him. He's running wheel routes. He's running dig routes. Unfortunately, he didn't get open on the flea flicker, which would have, because I think he was the read on the flea flicker, even though and again, with the screenshots, everybody be careful with screenshots because they don't always tell the story of what was happening at that moment. And, other guys looked like they were open, but he's playing amazing football. And I give credit to Matt LaFleur. I give credit to Aaron Rodgers, because as much as Aaron Rodgers should be falling in line and playing within the offense and taking this option and getting Jones involved, it's an adjustment. He's thrown to really good wide receivers and a very wide receiver, tight end heavy offense for 15 years. And all of a sudden, he's got a new coach, and the coach is like, hey, throw it to throw the swing pass, throw the check down. And he's finally hitting on some of these shorter throws. I mean, Aaron Jones has been fantastic, and we knew he was really good his first season. He broke off a couple of big runs. He was hitting some home runs in 2017 when Aaron Rodgers was down. And, I think Jones is part of the reason why there was a chance when Rodgers came back and played against Carolina in December that year that the Packers still had a shot to maybe make the playoffs late. So what else can you say? I mean, he's your offensive player of the week. There were guys. I worked with a guy who traded Aaron Jones away on his fantasy team a couple of weeks ago, and he complains about it. And I don't do fantasy football. And by the way, Jake, I know you co-signing this. No one cares about your fantasy team.
Not a damn soul.
Complains about it on the daily, and I just smile because it's an incredible thing that he does, and it is nice to be on the other side of it where it's like, hey, I always and again, my negativity is very easy to trigger. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point when we drill down on the second quarter that was. And I always say the Packers, they let the easy, obvious things befuddle them, but Aaron Jones is that to other teams, and they still can't figure him out. So it's, he is a great player, and there's this is his third season. At this point, barring any major setback or injury, I know you don't pay running backs, but Packers are going to probably have to start thinking about what they're going to do with Aaron Jones, because he is not somebody that your offense wants to do without.
No, and I mean, we said it coming into the season that we thought Jones was a perfect fit for this offense. And it's definitely played out that way, that Jones has been, I mean, honestly, skill position-wise, Devontae Adams hasn't played. Jones is the most important player from a skill position standpoint on this offense. And that's something that I'm sure we could have foreseen coming. But it's been nice to watch him and Jamal Williams. And Jamal Williams deserves a lot of credit too, honestly. I know Jones is the flashy player with the star potential. Jamal Williams is that dude who's good at a lot of things, may not be great at anything, but the things he's good at are so important to the offense. He's reliable, he's assignment sure, tough, hard-nosed runner, has been durable early in his career. He's a really good pass catcher. I think he's more natural in the passing game than Aaron Jones is, and that's not something that I mean to say as a detriment to Aaron Jones, more as a compliment to Jamal Williams. And Jamal Williams is hilarious. After the game, one of the reporters asked if he could feel the linebacker in him or something like that, and Williams laughed and said, I'm childish at the end, which, I'm childish, so that's why I brought it up here during the show. But Williams has been really good. The Packers 1-2 punch at running back. I mentioned, I think I might have said it in the preseason show, that I wouldn't be surprised if Dexter Williams became the second running back behind Jamal Williams. And that just is really hard to foresee happening. And frankly, I don't want it to. Jamal Williams has been awesome, and he definitely deserves some of the credit for what has gone on as well. The Packers 1-2 punch at running back is definitely something worth reckoning with as this season continues and gets into the colder months. I feel really good about Green Bay's ability to run the ball and their play-action passing game that comes off of that, and their ability to put both running backs on the field at the same time because they can catch the ball. Danny Vitale, a weapon too. I mean, their backfield really is a weapon in the passing game, and that's something that hasn't been the case for several seasons. Really, maybe even since before Mike McCarthy was the head coach. He just wasn't somebody that used running backs in the passing game as much as maybe he should have. So offensively, that really was the story of the night, was that the running backs both had some big-time performances. A great highlight reel throw from Aaron Rodgers to Jake Kumaro. That was nice. The throw in the back of the end zone, which we're at two now. 2 times I've woken the baby up during a Packers game, because when Jamal Williams caught that pass, I just screamed, "Oh my God," because I was just in awe.
I don't think we all screamed because that was a throwaway that ended up being a touchdown.
Yeah, it was incredible, and I was just in awe. It's kind of funny to me, you were talking about, and we'll talk about this too in our next video when we get through the Chargers, but just kind of saying how statistics don't always tell the whole story, because I thought, I kind of talked about in recent games how I thought Aaron Rodgers was playing lights out football, and maybe the numbers weren't necessarily showing that. The Lions game comes to mind, for example. The Dallas game comes to mind, for example. This is one of the games where I didn't think Rodgers was necessarily at his best, but he played well enough and then found a way there, especially after he had one ball that was up the right sideline that definitely should have been intercepted, but was not, fortunately for him and the rest of the team. But I thought he played really well. That was something that was interesting, just an observation that I had in that regard. Jason, not all pretty. The second quarter, quite frankly, was horrendous. The Packers were outscored 17-0 in the second quarter. They race out to a 14-point lead, and I'm kind of kicking back in my chair thinking this is going to be an ass whooping. And there's no way that Matt Moore can recover from this deficit. Making them one-dimensional is going to help. Taking away some of the easy things from Andy Reid. My biggest beef, I guess, with the Packers defense, and ultimately they tightened up in the second half. They made some plays. They won the game. That's what matters the most. My biggest complaint was that this team is good enough, especially on defense, for you to dictate what is going to happen to the opposing offense. And I felt, and granted, Mike Pettine's a hell of a lot smarter than I will ever be, but I certainly felt that he was a little too passive in their game plan with Kansas City. It almost felt like he was afraid for them to beat him deep down the field, so he was sacrificing a lot of the shorter stuff in the name of not getting beat down the field. What did you see, Jason? I mean, I know the frustration level was obviously pretty high, and understandably so, when you have a second quarter where you give up 17 points. Something that I certainly also felt, though, was that it wasn't like Matt Moore was fitting things into tight windows. You know, he was throwing outside of a 3rd and 12 conversion. That can't happen against a bad quarterback. And that's what Matt Moore is, because quite frankly, I mentioned it before last week. Good backup means bad starter, and that's what Matt Moore is. He's a bad starter. He played well. He deserves credit for that, certainly. Andy Reid designed a really good game for him. But in general, the second quarter, is there any concern of that team, that specific group, moving forward?
So it's fine. I think we know the Packers are going to give up some plays. They're going to give up yards. Bend but don't break, all the cliches. But the one thing that they hadn't been doing all season is giving up points. So when they give up that many points in the second quarter, yeah, it's concerning, because to me, we still have 2 other quarters to play, and it's like, okay, the Chiefs have figured out the Packers defense, and we're going to be looking at a shootout where the Packers are literally going to have to score every time they have the ball. Well, obviously they figured things out in the second half, and that didn't happen. But in the moment and at the time, the second quarter was what sent me into my typical Twitter tirade I don't take my tweets down. If you want to go back and read them and look at them and have a good laugh, go for it. I'd laugh at myself sometimes. I put one tweet up there that said, well, let's all remember when this game was just 17-14 and remember the good times. Well, it didn't get any worse, much worse.
No, they never trailed again. I'm just pointing.
Yeah, they never trailed again. But I was thinking about, the way that the trajectory was going, it just looked like, man, if the Packers just get stopped like 1 or 2 times, the Chiefs are going to march down and score every single time. Okay, fine. You don't want Tyreek Hill to beat you over the top. You don't want the obvious thing to get you, and that's fine. I just, another thing too that I want to give credit to is, the pass rush. They had 2 sacks on the night, which is fine. And I think they created some pressure, and obviously Andy Reid, give him credit. He's a great play caller, and he wanted to get the ball into Matt Moore's hands. You don't want Matt Moore hanging on to the ball. If he does, he's going to get murdered by Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, Rashawn Gary, maybe even Kyler Fackrell. Who knows? But once again, Kansas City had a good game plan for handling some of that pressure, much like Oakland did the week prior. So teams kind of are figuring out how to handle the pressure. And then you've got Blake Martinez, who is playing with a club cast. He's not going to be an effective blitzer, where he's done that in some past games. He's not he can't cover a pass. The interesting thing on that to me was Blake Martinez with a club cast is out there, and Oren Burks is not. Oren Burks was supposed to be the guy that the Packers acquired or drafted to come in and cover a guy like Travis Kelce or make sure the middle of the field doesn't get annihilated. And they went with Blake Martinez. So much like Josh Jackson, I don't know what the scoop is with Oren Burks. I'm inclined to trust the coaching staff, and I'm sure there's a good reason. And maybe he's still trying to get fully back from that pec injury, but he's suiting up and playing where he can on special teams. Second quarter, just throw it out the window. It doesn't matter because the Packers ended up winning the game. But I think my bigger frustration was you've got a golden opportunity here to play a game against a team that's missing its best, most dynamic player, who we saw plenty of on the sideline. I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with that, by the way.
No, it's one of the biggest stars of the game. You market him.
But I just get a damn win. Just stop getting, befuddled. I've been using that term all night. By playing in Kansas City, by playing in venues that you don't play well in, and just win the damn thing. Don't worry about where you are. Just get over the hump. I've only seen them, I think, winning in Kansas City once before, which was the Favre game we talked about last show. And you said it, they needed a late Chuck Woodson pick. I know he hates Chuck, to help seal that victory. So that was in the moment. That's why my frustration in the second quarter. But kudos to the entire team, the offense and the defense, coming out in the second half and taking care of business which at the time we didn't know they were going to do. But 17 points in a quarter. My wish from this point forward, and there may be others that come along, but my wish for the rest of this season is that the Packers don't ever give up that many points in one quarter again.
Yeah, that would be nice. And something that I mentioned on Pack-A-Day, and I'm sure it'll come up again, but when you get in the playoffs, there's going to be times where you're facing Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, and the Rams have an explosive. You're going to face. You're not facing bums in the playoffs. That's just unless you're the Patriots.
Well, the Vikings could get in too.
Well, okay. So if the Vikings get in, then I guess Kirk Cousins melting at Lambeau in the playoffs is something I am all for. But you're not facing scrubs when you get in the playoffs for the most part. Like I said, unless you're the Patriots, in which case the AFC is so freaking bad. They'll probably play an AFC East team in the second round, and somebody will knock off Kansas City, so we can't even get the Mahomes Brady rematch we deserve. But you need to limit those defensive lapses, if you will. You can't give up 17 points in a quarter. That's got to be 10 or 13 at the most. You just can't have a quarter like that. But they weren't playing in the playoffs. They were playing in Kansas City, and like you mentioned, Jason, just win the game, get over the hump, and they did. They did. That is something that, and I'm going to do this one more time, and it's something I really want to stress to Packers people in general. Not everything has to be compared to Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy got fired.
Guilty.
And I get it to some point, but Mike McCarthy got fired. Mike McCarthy deserved to get fired. Mike McCarthy was also a great Super Bowl winning head coach in this state. Mm-hmm. I have mentioned several times I think he's the best coach in the history of the Packers, not named Vince Lombardi in the modern era. Curly Lambeau obviously goes in that conversation as well. So you're basically saying that I think he's a better coach than Mike Holmgren was. The longevity probably helps him in that regard too. Not everything needs to go with, oh my God, Aaron Jones is being used. It's amazing how bad Mike McCarthy screwed that up. Yeah, we know that. But you know what? He did a lot of good things in his time as well. He's moved on. I think we need to move on as a fan base as well and appreciate the coach that we have, because through 8 games, all gas, no break, man. Something that I think was really a testament to this team's mentality, his confidence in his players, and becoming a trend. Because against Minnesota, the Packers needed to run the clock out, and he threw the ball in a situation that was designed for running the ball. He threw a pass to Devontae Adams, got a first down, essentially ran the clock out. Sunday night, it's 3rd and 5. The Packers need 1 first down to win the game, and he tells Aaron Rodgers, go win the game. You have a $134 million quarterback. LaFleur easily could have ran the ball and basically said, we're going to run 40 seconds and make Matt Moore go the length of the field and score a touchdown. Instead, he said, we're trying to win the game right now. Something I tweeted out LaFleur's quote, which was given out by Matt Schneiderman, and I'm sorry, Matt, if I butchered your name there, but was that one coach played aggressive and one coach played to win. That was Matt LaFleur. Another coach punted on 4th and 3 in enemy territory. That was Andy Reid. And both coaches were rewarded accordingly. And I think something There were occasions when Mike McCarthy was aggressive. There were other occasions when he was way too passive, and that was part of several things. Part of what did him in as the Packers head coach. It is refreshing for me to see that the head coach has the confidence in his players, the confidence in his quarterback to say, go win the game. And not only that, Jason, let's talk about this last play. It's 3rd and 5. What was refreshing for me to see was instead of, because like I mentioned before, a lot of these plays are designed for the player. Money players on the money down. Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, just to use that Patriots example again. Sunday night, that was Aaron Jones. But instead of just saying, hey, we're going to get Jones split to the outside, Jones win a one-on-one. Instead of doing that, they ran a play with some design to that to scheme him open, and it worked. They got him open. He got a first down. Instead, and granted, Devontae Adams, if that play is designed for him, he can win a one-on-one. But you increase your margin for error, which is something that the Packers just haven't done a whole lot of on offense in recent years. How impressed were you with LaFleur's late-game decision-making and maybe some of his potty mouth that came in before that on one of my favorite gifts of LaFleur so far?
It worked out. It's you can't argue with it, and it's been working. And again, the one thing you want to point to, if you want to defend this year's Packers team and Matt LaFleur, you only need to say 3 words: 7-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say too about Mike McCarthy, since I've been guilty of making the comparison, and yeah, you're right, it is time. Half a season later, let's move on. But the other thing I do want to say is that for as much flack as a lot of us gave Mike, and he deserves some of it, some of the issues from last season and from McCarthy's tenure are still happening. The Packers are still running the clock down, whether that's intentional to play clock down, whether that's intentional or not. Some of the early timeouts, some of the communication, some of that other stuff is still happening. So,
right.
I'm not blaming Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not trying to point blame here, but I'm just saying that, there's 2 sides to it, and there's even more reason there why we should just appreciate McCarthy for who he was and move on. That play was phenomenal. It was fantastic. I mean, to see the Packers win this game, beat the Chiefs, do it in that fashion, have Aaron Jones catch so many balls, see Jamal Williams catch a pass like that, end the game on a play like that, which is not something we're used to seeing. Typically, my opinion, typically in that space in the past, that's Randall Cobb territory right there. That's Randall Cobb's job. They don't have Randall Cobb anymore. So now Aaron Jones doing what he does is helping make up for the loss of Cobb, because let's be honest, they didn't replace Cobb adequately. They came into the season hoping that they were going to have, they had to put EQ on injured reserve, not planned for. Darius Shepard didn't develop, not planned for. Geronimo had some injuries, and fortunately, Alan Lazard has stepped up. But you got to go with, like you said, great, you got options. You got to go with your playmaker. You go with the hot hand. It's just like, in basketball, who's getting the ball? The hot hand, whoever's shooting the ball the best. Well, Aaron Jones was if it was basketball, he was shooting the lights out, the lights out of the gym. Just absolutely incredible. So I like what they're doing. I like that they're thinking about, how they can pick up 5 yards, scheme it open, because that kind of stuff's going to become very important when you get to the end of the season. You mentioned the playoffs and playing against good quarterbacks. You're also be playing against some really good defenses.
Yep.
And it's going to come down to inches, and it's going to come down to a window of a receiver being open of, like, if you don't throw it on time, it ain't happening. You're going to have to rely on your scheme. And these have been good looks. And this was great to see Jones do what he did, and the entire rest of the team. I mean, they got fuel from so many different gas pumps on Sunday night with the number of guys that contributed. And let's give credit to the offensive line, because once again, those guys don't get enough credit. Now, interestingly enough, we came in saying Brian Bulaga hadn't given up a pressure. I think he did in this game. I think everyone did. The Chiefs brought a lot of pressure at points, and the offensive line had it was some injuries. Bulaga hurt his finger. Bakhtiari came out for a snap. Alex Light actually played okay in relief. But give credit to all those guys, because it takes the entire engine to make it work. But, finally finally, to the crowd out there that's bitching and complaining about what the Packers paid Aaron Rodgers, well, he came through and did what he was supposed to do. So what do you have to say now?
Yeah, we have a visitor actually down here now. So Blake Elizabeth has graced us with her presence. So I'm very quickly going to hold and hug the baby because why wouldn't I do that? So they needed to bring me my charge cord for my iPhone. So here is the baby right here. So for everybody that has seen, she's very curious.
Well, I can't see. Just so you guys know, it looks like we can see each other. I cannot see, so I am being deprived of some baby time tonight.
Yeah, so this is baby time. She likes to give her analysis, but right now she thinks the Packers are 7-1, and that is where the Green Bay Packers are at 7-1 after beating the Kansas City Chiefs. Thank you guys for listening to the show. Follow the YouTube channel, Pulse of the Pack. You can find us with our new logo. You can follow us on Twitter. It's at Packer Pulse. You can follow Jason. He's at Jason Perona. You can follow me. I am at Jacob Westendorf. Thank you guys. Packers win 31-24 over the Kansas City Chiefs. And see you next time. And always, go Pack, go.